A 35-year-old man has pleaded guilty to smuggling 67 handguns across the border from the United States into Canada. Randy Jackson, no, not the American Idol Randy Jackson, was a combat veteran, an upstanding citizen, so much so that he could get a Nexus card, which allowed him to travel across the border with ease. He was from Michigan, served a couple of tours in Kuwait, and had a family in London, Ontario. So he didn't trip any radars when he was going across the border, even though he was bringing with him over the course of a couple of years dozens of illegal guns. Guns that were in fact used in crime, recovered in many cases by police in Toronto. This story is unfortunate, but it tells us what we should already know, that with the longest unprotected border in the world, and quite frankly, people that go across for any number of reasons many times, our threat when it comes to illegal guns in Canada comes not from domestic guns owned by legal and licensed gun owners like myself, but from the illegal gun trade, the black market. Yet still, politicians and police try to put the blame elsewhere, which serves no other purpose than to restrict the rights of law-abiding gun owners. The fact is, the Canadian government publishes no nationwide data on the origins of guns used in crime. The only data that do exist come from a few isolated reports by local police departments, and these have proven themselves time and time again to be immensely flawed. For example, the Toronto police released a now infamous memo saying that about half of the guns used in crime were sourced domestically, which means they supposedly came from a legal gun owner who decided to sell their gun illegally to make a quick buck. Even though the story was phony and debunked very easily, the media ran with it and still has not corrected the record. Well, let's look at what was so flawed with that. 35% of what the Toronto police classed as crime guns, according to their own report, weren't actually firearms under the law. So 1/3 of the guns that they were talking about wouldn't even qualify as actual guns. More importantly, the definition of what they considered a crime gun was far too broad to be of any significance. If they busted you for something that had nothing to do with firearms but found a gun in your home, that was classed as a crime gun, as one notable example. And the worst part was that they assumed anything they couldn't trace to be domestic. And this was pointed out by activist Dennis Young using data he found himself through an access to information request. I would love for the Canadian government to be more transparent here, but quite frankly, the best data we have come from the American agency, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. The ATF released a report in 2016. This report found that nearly every crime gun traced in Canada came across the border illegally. The report, which is publicly available, found that 98.5% of the crime guns traced by the RCMP had American origins. Yet again, the narrative in Canada, the narrative to Toronto police, is that it's the gun owners like me who are the problems, not the gun smugglers like Randy Jackson. That my rights need to be curbed to curb gun violence in Toronto. Keep in mind, last year in Toronto, there were 424 shootings, the highest on record for the city. And half of the city's 96 murders came from firearms. These were gang issues, using guns sourced illegally, and as we know from the case of Mr. Jackson and countless other reports, sourced most often through cross-border means. Yet police would rather cast blame where it doesn't belong rather than deal with reality. And that's why the True North Initiative is here, to do the work that the political elites and the mainstream media refuse to do, to stand up for your rights as a gun owner and as a Canadian. We can't do it alone, though. There's a link in the description box if you'd like to join one of my clubs and support the work that I'm doing for as low as $10 a month. It comes with special benefits, but most importantly, lets me keep standing up for you. For the True North Initiative, I'm Andrew Lutton.